I had an encounter with a secret society. I really need your help, Axe. I have no idea whether or not what I experienced was real, or what is going to happen to me now. I have been debating internally for a while whether I should share this experience, and I feel like if I do, things might end up bad for me, but fuck it, I guess. I'm going to recount what happened to the best of my ability. Be me, 23 years old, and from a fairly wealthy family. We live in the San Fran area, and my parents have always been well off. Not really sure what they do, but I know it's important. I am kind of a fuck-up. Never got good grades, failed high school, and have just been mooching ever since. I basically just do whatever I want, and I see my parents maybe a couple of times a month. Anyway, one night I decide I just want to forget about everything, and I go to this kind of dingy nightclub out of the way. For the area I live in, the line was surprisingly short. It does not matter how dogshit the place is, everything here is constantly overflowing. Anyway, I made my way in, and, surprise surprise, the place is pretty barren. Place is pretty dimly lit, and it seems like whoever run the place forgot to pay the electrical bill. There were a few scattered people standing off to the side and talking to one another, but they were few and far between. Mostly wearing dark colors, but they were dressed surprisingly well for a nightclub. It seemed like they were dressed for a fancy dinner, rather than for dancing. I was only here because my cousin recommended the place, but I obviously should not have listened to him. Dumbass has terrible taste, it seems. After maybe like 20 minutes of sipping the worst beer I've ever had in my life, off in a corner on my own, some random girl comes up to me. She was dressed in the same kind of attire, and she is absolutely stunning. I literally cannot take my eyes off of her as she approaches me. She says something about working there, and I'm thinking, since when do bartending staff at a nightclub just walk around? She leans towards me and makes some weird motion with her fingers in the air. It's like she is drawing a word or a symbol with her finger, but like, directed towards me, I guess. She does it once, then moves closer, and does the same motion again, except she is actually touching me this time. Some kind of swirling motion directly on my forehead. There are mirrors close by, and I turn and look, but I can't see anything, so I guess she didn't actually draw on me. I feel kinda weird after it too. Like, something inside me kinda snaps awake. No, it wasn't a fucking boner, shut up. Like, I almost feel drowsy, but not exactly. It's a hard thing to describe, but I just feel different. She laughs at me and stares directly into my eyes and tells me to make the most of my chance, whatever the fuck that means. She walks away and goes behind the bar and does not take her eyes off of me for the next hour or so. I just stay in my corner, awkwardly sipping my beer. I tried to start a conversation with a few people who were sitting down, but they just gave me the stink eye and didn't answer me. Literally just, hey, what's up? You guys been here before or first time? Silence, stare, I back away. Then they kept shooting me glances, just like the bar girl. In fact, I am pretty sure I caught everyone that was there staring at me at one point. No one entered or left the bar for the next hour or so, and I decided I had had enough. Did not even get a chance to leave. The bar girl frantically rushes over to me when she sees I'm going to head up the stairs and grabs me by the arm and starts to pull me back. She insists that I stay and tells me that I can't leave yet. She tells me that I haven't finished yet and that there will be more to say. Doesn't even pique my curiosity. I just want to get drunk somewhere comfortable. She grabs my arm again, but I shrug her off, and then my vision goes black. Like, 1 second I was walking up the stairs, and the next I was waking back up in some back room. I hadn't really explored the place and mostly just stuck to one spot, but with how big the room looked, the layout of it, it didn't seem possible within the context of the rest of the place. I feel really nauseous, like I had just gone on a 7-day bender. Even just sitting up in the kind of, I don't even know, not a couch but like a seat from a booth that is kinda wide, makes me feel like I'm going to throw up the entire contents of my stomach. My head is spinning, and as I'm trying to figure how the fuck I ended up here when I was just leaving, someone opens the door to the room and walks in. A man, maybe 6 feet tall. I can't see his face at all. My spinning vision does not help, but it's obscured by the kind of robe thing he has on over his head. I'm annoyed, but I don't want to risk jumping up due to how sick I feel, but I instantly start barraging him with questions. Where am I? Who the fuck are you? How did I get here? And what did you do to me? He walks towards me and takes his sweet ass time. He stops once he gets to where I'm sat, more like lying down at this point. He proceeds to stare me down for a good 30 seconds before putting his finger to his mouth and shushing me. This makes me even more annoyed, and I decide to jump up towards him. The instant I do, he open palm slaps me across the face and pushes me back down with ease as I have no sense of balance. He pulls his hood down, and he is wearing a mask. You know that fucked up rabbit mask from Donnie Darko? Yeah, that's my best description, although it's not exactly the same. It doesn't have the long ears or the goofy features. The eyes have cutouts, so you can see the eyes of the person wearing it. This guy had pure amber eyes, but lots of stress veins, and what looked like a broken blood vessel in the right one. Just a splotch of red. He tells me to be quiet and that this is my last chance. I don't really have a choice considering the state I'm currently in. He tells me this is a test, that I was recommended for it. What the fuck does that mean? I try to ask him who, but he shushes me again. He tells me someone in my family. He says I'm lucky to be given this honor and to not squander it. He pulls something out of his pocket and lays it out onto a table. It's a map. He tells me it's the layout of where we are. The man tells me that he will be my guide for the night, but that he cannot interfere. He can only answer whatever questions I have, but that he cannot decide my actions for me. I ask him what the test is about, but I'm only told that I will have to find out. He reaches his hand out to me, and I grab it and manage to get up. I am very barely able to steady myself, and my vision and head is still messed up. After pulling me up, he walks to the left side of the booth I was sitting on and pulls out a cardboard box that was hiding in the corner. It looks old and dusty. It must have been left untouched for at least a few years or so. He opens it up and tells me to pick one. I look inside. A collection of masks. They are similar in style to the one that the guide is wearing, except different animals, but not just animals. Some are like caricatures of famous celebrities, but with like exaggerated features and expressions. Like those artists who you go to, and they draw a portrait of you, but fucked up looking. Some are celebrity faces, some are world leaders, politicians. It's honestly kind of unsettling in a way that I can't explain. I think someone got a bit too carried away reading Mad magazine. I reach in, and I just chose the first one I saw. A smiling frog. Sure, I guess. I put it on, and ask the guy how I start the test. He does not say a word to me, and just walks out of the door he originally came through. I hurry up, and quickly follow behind him. He leads me down a corridor to an elevator door, and we both get in. Only 2 buttons. Up or down. I press down. The elevator travels for a good minute or so, with a few bumps along the way, and then finally opens up. The guide waits for me to step out, so I guess he is following me from now on. I step out, and it's what looks like kind of an office building. Expensive looking. Lots of computers, lots of files, all piled high. Tons of office cubicles. What the fuck? There's actually a few people down here typing away. All wearing masks, just like me. There is a door on the opposite end of the room, but that is it. Nothing else at all. I look at my guide with a "so what now" face. He tells me to choose. He won't elaborate. I'm guessing he means the computers or the door. Thing is, I don't really know what I'm choosing. I don't know what is on these computers. I kinda shuffle over to one of the cubicles hesitantly, and I try to get a peek at some of the files. On the front, it's just code names and other things I don't understand. The guy puts a hand on my shoulder and tells me all decisions are final. I'm like, what does that mean? And he tells me if I choose wrong, the test ends and I will be stuck with whatever I chose. Stuck down here forever with computers? He shakes his head. Knowledge or continue is the only other clue he will give me. Okay, cryptic, but definitely tempting. I ask who the people are. He tells me they are members. Members don't have to choose. By this point, I think I'm starting to grasp the concept. I need to complete this test. I do a half-speed walk to the door at the other end. The next room is like some large warehouse type thing. It's large and quite hard to navigate. Tons of shipping containers. Text on the side in a language I could not read. Another room was filled to the brim with DVDs and even had a couch. The couch was already occupied by two seedy-looking men. Really creeped me out, so I kept continuing through the rooms. I didn't really see the purpose of a lot of these rooms or what exactly they were offering. The computers made sense after I was told. The room with an ATM and a blank bank card on a table obviously were clear to me, but some I was just like, huh? Like, one of the rooms had meat hooks, but they were empty. It smelled like rotten meat. Why would anyone choose to stay there? Was it just a willpower test to see if I could stop myself from investigating further? Was it a loyalty test, or a test to see if I could follow commands, no questions asked? Yeah, I was lost, especially by the time I came to a room that was just a bunch of masked people engaged in an orgy. I very quickly got the fuck out of there. I reached for the door handle, and my guy grabbed my arm before I could turn the doorknob. He just said to me, "Last test." He lets go and allows me to proceed once again. I find myself in the complete pitch black. I can hear pretty loud footsteps of what I assume to be my guide walking around. I can also hear something muffled. Not quite sure what it is, just a series of noises and not anything that makes sense to me. All of a sudden, a light switch is flicked on. I'm in some kind of fucking lab. The light is so bright it's seriously fucking with my eyes, like I can see every inch of the room. My head is still throbbing from whatever they knocked me out with. That's what I assumed happened anyway. There is an examination table in the center of the room. Holy shit. The girl from the bar. The one who reached for me. The one who told me that I wasn't done yet. She is gagged and strapped down onto the fucking table. Okay, yeah, I've seen enough. I'm definitely not picking this one. Test complete. Let's wrap it up. There isn't another door. I ask my guide how I leave. He tells me, not yet. Okay, so how do I finish the fucking trial? Her. She is screaming, but the gag is not letting her. She is using all of her strength to try and escape, but it is pointless. I tell him no. I ask him what is happening and why. He tells me she is a traitor, that this is the final test. I tell him no fucking way, and he grabs me by the throat and puts a knife to it. Up until this point, he has been so cryptic, trying so hard to be mysterious, like some edgy, cringy kid, but he lays it all out pretty clearly for me. Look, kid, I'm tired of fucking around. You've had plenty of chances to make a choice. This one is not yours to make. Gut her and leave, or refuse, and I will gut you both. I can't even respond. I feel like my neck is about to be cracked from the force. This guy is stronger than his physique suggests. He digs the knife into my cheek and throws me to the ground. I spend 5 minutes catching my breath, and he kicks me and tells me that I'm now on a time limit. 1 minute, or he is gonna finish it himself. I start panicking. I start pleading to let her go, asking if I can do something, just anything I can think of. I try and say something about how I was recommended, and that he can't do this, and that my family member won't let this happen. His face is pretty much emotionless, and he tells me a recommendation is just that, then says, 30 seconds left. By now I am desperate. The screaming, the adrenaline, the muffled cries from the woman, the shaking of the table, every little bit of stimuli is overwhelming. I say, basically screaming at this point, how? He gestures around the room and tells me anything. I spot a surgical knife on a tray on one of those metal tables on wheels, and I launch myself at it. I grab it and scramble over, and I still can't look her in the eyes. I start telling her how sorry I am, how I don't want to do this, how I am so scared. Just thrashing, muffled shouts in response. The guide shouts, 15 seconds left. My adrenaline is through the roof, and I have to stifle my own breathing and just force myself to stop thinking. I just mutter, I'm so sorry, again and again under my breath while sobbing. One quick cut to the neck, and it is over. I just kind of collapse to the floor in shock and start hyperventilating. The guide rushes over to the table, the instant I am done, and I mean the instant. He pulls something out of his pocket, some kind of vial that looks like a sort of muddy brown, and uses a syringe to suck up its contents. He stabs the syringe into the woman. I can't see where from the floor, and then reaches down for me and yanks me to my feet. He grabs me in a sort of headlock and forces me to look at her lifeless body. I try to turn my head. He keeps it in place. I try to close my eyes, but he forces them open with his fingers. He tells me, congratulations, and just fucking chuckles to himself, the sick fuck. 1 minute goes by of him holding me like this, but it feels like a lifetime. I cannot believe what I am fucking seeing. The woman, she is back to thrashing again with what seems like twice the fervor. The guide is just laughing and starts forcing me forward. I am screaming, begging, pleading, demanding to know what is going on. All he tells me is, one final choice. What fucking choice? He pushes me closer and closer and forces my neck as close to the woman as he can without her being able to reach me. She looks like she is giving herself whiplash trying to get to me, moving her arms, kicking her legs, whipping her head, and making a biting motion. I am in tears, complete and utter tears. I cannot control them anymore. I am trying to form words through them, but I can't even do that anymore. I have no composure left. He tells me, you or someone else. Some type of primal instinct takes over my body and I yell, not me, over and over again until I have no breath left in my body, in between the sobs. I feel a stab in my neck and everything fades to black again. I woke up back at home after that. Daylight was starting to break, and I was covered in sweat, head to toe. My bed was soaked. I could not find any mark, any sort of evidence I had been out of the house. No prick on my neck, no stab, not even any scents from the place. No one was home except for me, so I couldn't even ask anyone if I had actually been out that night. Fuck. I woke up with pajamas on, and the clothes that I wore that night were hung in my closet and smelled fresh and clean. I called my cousin who recommended the place to me and basically just screamed on the phone because I could not get my thoughts in order. He didn't outright call me crazy, but his tone definitely suggested it. He told me to calm down and that the place is a little rough, but it's a fun little club to make friends in. Did you do some bad drugs someone offered you or something? And he chuckled down the phone at me. I just hung up. Have not spoken to him since then. I have no idea if I passed or failed. I don't really go out drinking anymore and spend my time on the web. I just stay indoors from now on. Please, X, help me make sense of what the fuck happened to me. I would really like to believe that someone just spiked my drink and I dreamt the whole thing up, but it felt way too real to be that. My mom told me long ago that my dead great aunt was a self-proclaimed witch. It started back in the 50s. She was already 30 years old, and suddenly she became rich from winning the lottery, according to said great aunt, due to a deal with the devil, as she had learned witchcraft from the women in the neighborhood. I live at the north of Mexico, and in the old neighborhoods of my city, there is a long history of witchcraft and narwhals, pre-Hispanic animal shapeshifters. During the 60s, all her children and husband died from different types of tumors. the oldest son, who also claimed to have made such deal, choked on his food. She started to develop a hump and deformed hands due to osteoporosis. Things went on without much development until the early 80s, my mom being 10 or so at the time, and my grandma being around her late 20s. My grandma, being the first of their sisters to marry, was considered the youngest adult in the family. Her sisters were already in their early 20s, but not being married and childless made them kids, and my great-aunt called for her. No photos were taken, as my great-aunt was ashamed of how deformed her body had become, but my grandma called it nightmarish. To her surprise, at her aunt's, not only her, but a shaman waited as well. The shaman made some ritual my grandma did not understand, then gave my grandma a silver ring and told her not to take it off. After that, grandma went back home, and that was it. My grandpa bought a big area of land, which, over the decades, he has built and expanded quite a nice house, but at its beginnings, it was just a small room in the middle of a bunch of dirt. It is said, my great-aunt during the night buried what was left of her fortune, which my grandpa tried to find to no avail. The weeks passed, and every morning, my grandparents would find small mounds of dirt and salt around their home. Eventually, the ring turned black and was staining my grandma's finger. Thinking it was because it was some cheap ring, my grandma took her ring off. Then my kid uncle, who was taking a bath, heard some banging on the bathroom window, so my mom, who was on the backyard, but none saw anyone. Someone outside on the street yelled, "The work is done," and before my grandpa could come out to kick his ass, the person was gone. The next morning, they called my grandma about the death of my great-aunt. My uncle said that at night, he could see the Native American ghosts dancing in the backyard. The place had been Apache territory in the past to where the treasure was buried, but my grandpa planted a tree over it. This came out because the grandma of my mom's childhood friend just died, and apparently she was another witch. I see some weird shit in Arizona. I've got a place right on the edge of the desert down in the valley, and a really nice concrete cabin right on the edge of the forest in Flagstaff. One thing both have in common are coyotes. There are shitloads of coyotes that live right on the edges of civilization. They thrive there, scavenging and eating people's pets. When I'm in the valley, I like to go on walks during full moons. It's so bright outside that you can see almost perfectly, and the sun is not beating you down constantly. This was one such night, and I decided to go out. I followed the wash out to the canal, which has 3 trails next to it that extend out into the desert, and I decided to take the one that meanders out away from the canal into the wilderness proper. After a mile or so, the trail does a 90-degree turn when it meets the Native American reservation border. You're not supposed to go in there, but people do all the time. The views were spectacular, nothing like seeing the red rock formations on the horizon with the pale moon glow to them. I wasn't liking the idea of taking my eyes off the scenery in order to navigate through the desert, so I stayed on the trail. I could hear a pack of coyotes pretty close by, doing their crazy howling yipping thing they do when they tear apart a cat or something. I did not care. Coyotes are pussies, and they never attack humans. I kept walking, scanning the horizon for owls or something else interesting. I look over the shoddy barbed wire fence that's a border to the reservation, and I see a pack of coyotes not 200 feet away. There are lots of fairly deep dips in the trail, so it makes sense that I did not see them until now. I freeze to watch, and the moonlight illuminates things pretty clearly for me, in a colorless way. I notice one of the coyotes seems way bigger than the other ones. More than that, it looks really fucked up and is not moving properly. At first, I think it's a dead dog or something, and they are eating it, which made sense, the way they were all milling around in a circle around it. I stare with morbid curiosity as the coyotes seem to take turns looking back at me. Then the thing stands up, which scared the shit out of me, thinking it was dead. And even more, because it stood onto its hind legs and was at least 5 feet tall. As it raised its arms into the air, I realized that this was a person, or at least looked like one. He was wearing coyote pelts all over his body, and was carrying some darkly colored dead animal in one of his hands that the coyotes kept leaping and trying to get at as he raised it into the air. I had no fucking idea what to do at that point. I knew the coyotes weren't really dangerous, but this guy was obviously completely insane. He was inside the reservation, so I guess he had to be a native doing some crazy goddamn thing. I'd only been standing there a few seconds at this point when he realized his coyotes were looking at something and turned towards me. The moonlight was not enough to make out his face, and it was shadowed by pelts anyway. He just stared at me for a second or two as the coyotes walked in circles around him, looking at him, then looking at me, then at him again. He turned away from me and bolted into the desert, sprinting and jumping and doing a nearly perfect coyote yipping noise, which started the rest of them doing it. Weird. I've always wanted to live in Arizona just for the nature. Any other stories? I should mention, you cannot sprint through the desert around here. It's a goddamn minefield of cholla cactus that don't give a fuck what kind of footwear you have on. Even if you put on heavy boots, within 30 seconds, you would be walking on little lopsided islands of spines that are stuck to your feet and just begging you to lift your foot high enough to brush against your other leg's calf. I never made a habit of going onto the reservation. There are stories of natives riding up and escorting trespassers out at gunpoint, but I don't know what the fuck I saw that night. I think about it every single time I hear the coyotes go apeshit. A few actually. Seen all kinds of weird stuff in the sky around here too. I can even go take pictures of the place where I saw this fucker. I will share one I've shared before. I used to go to a small, non-denominational church from the time when I was 11 till I was about 17 years old. A neighborhood church with like 40 people in total. We had a prayer service on Wednesday nights where we just kind of prayed for each other for different things. I was 15 when this happened. One of the ladies in our church has been having pain in her back. She is older, so it makes walking very painful for her. Also has one leg shorter than the other, which makes it worse. We are praying over her, as we do almost every week. We are all huddled around her, laying hands on her as she sits in a chair in the center. As my pastor prays, we all hear an audible crack come from the old woman. She heaves a huge sigh, and we all look around at the prayer circle. Pastor is still praying, but we are all bug-eyed looking. Prayer ends, and the woman stands up. Pain is totally gone. Her legs are now the same length. Not me, but this was my dad's story before he passed. He was in a field, working for his uncle. Be him plowing a field by a drop-off towards a creek. Sees a hut that looks like a sweat lodge. Steps out of the plower because he hears animals coming from the sweat lodge like a bear, eagle, wolf, every animal you could name in the northern hemisphere. Hears what is coming from this dinky little hut and says, "Fuck this." Goes to tell his uncle, and his face goes flush. Tells him it's a good thing he never went inside or went any closer. Said it was bad magic. They decide to investigate the next morning. The next morning, 3 cows are dead on Uncle's farm. Uncle does not say anything other than, "Let's go investigate the sweat lodge my dad seen the other day." When they arrive, there is nothing but a circle where the sweat lodge would have been. Uncle says never to tell anybody of what he has seen or heard coming from that place. Dad eventually tells me about this because I was curious. I'm scared now, bros. What do I do if I encounter the bad magic again?